Architecture is stagnant. As we confront climate volatility and urban growth, the traditional building envelope has reached its functional limit, operating merely as a barrier that isolates us from our surroundings. Today, we need an alternative framework that redefines the facade as a dynamic feature capable of active environmental remediation and community transformation. Rather than designing structures that simply minimize their consumption or mask their carbon footprint, we analyze regenerative facades that actively generate energy, self regulate localized climates, purify urban air currents, and foster public environmental awareness. By tracking quantifiable performance metrics across these strategies, we demonstrate that a building's outer skin can be transformed into a highly efficient resource. Regenerative facades can offer significant benefits in microclimate regulation, especially when integrating moss coverings. Rather than attaching planter systems with intensive irrigation lines, modern regenerative facades utilize bioreactive concrete. This material modifies structural cement by adjusting its porosity and surface texture while lowering its structural alkalinity to invite the colonization of mosses naturally. The microclimate response is highly dynamic. The moss forms a dense, water-retaining canopy directly on the exterior structure, and when solar radiation spikes, it evaporates its stored moisture to create a localized cooling field. We track the success of this system through several primary metrics. First, in terms of surface temperature reduction. Field studies confirm that concrete surfaces covered by a mature moss canopy remain 2 to 5 degrees Celsius cooler than adjacent bare concrete, directly mitigating the urban heat island effect, which is where cities experience significantly higher temperatures than rural areas because of dark impermeable surfaces such as asphalt and concrete. Second, the facade provides an acoustic insulation due to the damp cellular and porous geometry of the moss cushions. It achieves a sound absorption coefficient of approximately 0.55, effectively dampening street-level frequencies. Finally, it operates with a zero-resource footprint, thriving passively on ambient humidity and rainwater channeled by surface grooves to require no secondary irrigation or soil networks. Solar optimization demonstrates how a regenerative facade can actively manage solar radiation rather than just passively blocking it. Using the pioneering technology of the BIQ house as our precedent, this project utilizes the world's first bioreactive facade. The solar leaf facade system features 129 glass bioreactors filled with live microalgae. What makes this technology so innovative is its dynamic real-time response to the environment. As sunlight intensifies, the algae rapidly multiply and naturally darken the glass, providing adaptive shading that perfectly regulates the building interior. Successful solar optimization is determined through 3 metrics. First, in terms of solar conversion, the system converts 38% of the solar radiation striking the facade into usable thermal energy and 10% into harvestable biomass. Second, this addresses the building's thermal load by providing 100% of its total hot water and heating requirements. Finally, it dramatically reduces cooling demand as the shifting of the algae completely offsets the need for mechanical cooling during the high solar summer peaks, proving that we can convert a potential burden into a massive energy asset. Proper airflow management allows buildings to manage how air enters and exits, as well as begin to lower the effects of nearby air pollution. To understand how facades can process moving air currents, we look to the Manuel Gea Gonzalez Hospital in Mexico City. This project utilizes a 2,500 square meter external skin composed of thermoformed panels coated with a superfine layer of photocatalytic titanium dioxide. What makes this technology a breakthrough in airflow management is its biomimetic shape, which is modeled after natural fractals like sponges and corals. Rather than allowing air to simply slip past the building, these geometries disrupt and slow down local wind patterns, generating microturbulence that forces maximum air contact against the surface to neutralize toxic pollutants right where they migrate. We measure the success of this filtration through a couple of metrics. First, in terms of smog mitigation, field data shows the facade removes enough nitrogen oxides and VOCs to offset the pollution of up to 8,750 cars every single day. Second, looking at indoor air protection, the turbulence generated by the screen filters and cleanses ambient airflow before it even enters the hospital's HVAC intakes, drastically reducing the load on building filtration systems. Finally, the geometric form delivers a passive environmental footprint. acting as a solar gain blocker and a natural light diffuser that significantly slashes the building's overall energy bill for climate control. Our final core strategy centers on ecological literacy, allowing facades to serve as a catalyst for community education and behavioral change. To translate this statement into measurable community literacy, these facades could implement a comprehensive public engagement framework, one that utilizes interactive CAD models and real-time environmental simulations on public touchscreens at the building's base, which allows residents to manipulate variables and visually understand how the geometry optimizes daylighting and energy. This digital experience is then paired with comprehensive site signage featuring clear infographics and downloadable informative brochures that demystify the regenerative facade systems. We can track the success of these educational interventions through a few metrics. First, in terms of community engagement, we track digital interactions via QR codes and brochure downloads, targeting a 25% engagement rate among weekly neighborhood visitors. Second, we measure knowledge retention through localized digital surveys, tracking a targeted 40% increase in local residents' understanding of biosustainability concepts within 6 months of exposure. Finally, we monitor the behavioral footprint by tracking local registration data in community-led green initiatives to quantify how visual architectural prompts translate into civic action. So how can facades become living dynamic participants in their environment? By shifting our architectural perspective. This allows us to redefine the building envelope from an inert defensive barrier into a dynamic regenerative system. Synthesizing the methods discussed, we transition from architecture that merely minimizes environmental damage to architecture that actively heals its surroundings. Measuring our success through quantifiable metrics proves that a building's ecological impact can be precisely calculated and optimized. This shift matters profoundly because as urban density rises and climate pressures intensify, the facade represents our largest untapped resource for localized community engagement and environmental remediation. Thank you for listening. This has been Team 3's narrative submission for Research Methods Summer 2026.